Good. Oh my God, the abrupt stop. Stop. Sorry, I'm still learning how to do this. We got a new streaming platform last year, by the way, and I'm still learning how to do this. Welcome to the Underground Game QA podcast, a podcast about quality assurance in the video game industry. My name is my pronouns are she, her. We have two fellow QA professionals joining us today, and I'll let them introduce themselves.
Hi there, my name is Ariel Smith. I'm a test discipline manager at Bungie, and my pronouns are she, her.
Hey, and I'm Marcin, and my pronouns are he, him.
Disclaimer, all individuals appearing in the podcast are not doing so as official representatives of their respective companies, and the opinions expressed here are their own. Man, than I did in the year in review show. I'm proud of myself.
Damn.
I'm getting better at
Yay!
this legalese. So today we're here to begin a set of controversy. No, to begin a series on certifications and specifically certifications in our industry. We saw the growth in one this year. So we're going to be focusing on the newly created ISTQB Game certification, but also kind of holistically talking about quality assurance certification as a whole and how it applies to us on the game industry side. We've been discussing it around the community. In fact, we had a session last Saturday or Sunday or Friday, depending on your time zone, whatever. Uh, we had a session last weekend to talk about this. Ariel will go more in depth on that. But we asked the community, what are the benefits? What are the drawbacks? And is this something you would ask of your teams? And so today, we want to talk about that. We want to find out, are we achieving those goals as an industry and as a discipline? Are we pushing ourselves to be better by talking about certifications and by placing kind of standards on what we do? So, are y'all ready to get started?
Heck yeah.
Heck yeah. I like the energy today. So, we're going to start with the lightning round. Do y'all have any certifications?
I have no QA related certifications, but I am a certified second Q brown belt in Aikido, and I'm also a certified conflict resolver from when I was in high school. I think that certification is still good, right? It's only like 20 years ago. I also have a driver's license, and I'm a certified speaker for Speakers Bureau.
I love
Damn.
it. Those are some good certifications.
Heck
We'll
yeah.
come back to him because I want to ask you a question about one of those in a second. Marcin, do you have certifications?
So I'm gonna learn today a lot of stuff.
Yeah.
I'm certified sports shooter. I don't know how it's. I think I'm certified. I don't know how it's in English. I wasn't prepared for that. I'm certified boat sailor, I guess. I don't know how you call it.
Okay.
And I think that, and of course, driver license. Unfortunately, I don't have any cool fighting or conflict management as Ariel, so I'm pretty vanilla.
I'm good at resolving conflict one way or another, is what I like to say.
Someone in the chat said, how related are the conflict resolution and Aikido certifications?
Entirely separate. One I got from my high school, the other I got from a dojo.
I feel like they could be close. So I'm similar. I've got my driver's license, which we regularly recertify for, at least in my state, and then I have I am a task oriented group facilitation methods certified facilitator.
Oh, dang.
Um, and then I have a bunch of ISTQB certifications, which we'll get to later. We'll talk about this.
Ominous
I
foreshadowing.
Yeah, ominous foreshadowing. So, Ariel Marcin, let me ask you this question: what do you feel like certifications provide for you when you look at yourself and when you look at your community around you? What does it let you know?
Looking at driving license, nothing. But
You can
I
use your
think
turn signal.
I think that's in the driving code. Trust no one. Like treat everyone like they don't know how to drive. That's the safest option. But I think during those all discussions that we had prior to the episode, like what came up the most is the trust into the institutions that certify people. So in theory, when you have two professionals, one doesn't have a certification in something like, I don't know, certification in English, and when one doesn't, like you more likely trust that the person with certification has more knowledge in English than the other one. Of course, then going back to you, how much do you trust the institutions themselves? Because there are a lot of people that basically don't believe in certification all that together, and they just feel like it's a scam. But I think there's some like it's reassuring that when you hire someone, like like you have, for example, I think the most important job there is the a doctor. Like you want to have a certified doctor treating you, right? Like you don't want to be by
Sure.
amateur or somebody who doesn't know. So I think that's super important to have that. But then that depends on the industry, right? Like how mature it is.
Yeah. Ariel, thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, I think that for most of my certifications, the main thing that they indicate is that I completed some form of training of a particular kind and by a particular group. So in the case of like my Speakers Bureau training, that says that the Speakers Bureau folks have in fact trained me on how to be a speaker for their org and the rules around that and how I can interact with people I'm speaking to and stuff like that. Um, and so, having done that, they can trust that I will follow the rules because they know that I know them, or they know that I at least have been told them at some point. Um, and similarly, like with like my Aikido certification, there was a lot of training that went into getting that. And whenever I go to a new dojo, for example, they can be reasonably confident of like where my skill level is without having to see me in action first.
Yeah.
Um, because I've already I've already done a lot of the same stuff that they're doing, and I was certified by a dojo that they're familiar with, and so they can be like, oh, okay, we have a pretty good idea of where you're at, like in terms of your training, just based on that.
Y'all kind of touched on it, but so when we think about certifications, why get certification at all? What's the point? You've touched on it a few, but I want us to be very kind of specific here. And as all of us are hiring managers in some way, shape, or form, it's important for us to verbalize this. So why get a certification at all?
I mean, one thing is what it communicates about you in terms of your level of expertise and your level of training, right? Like it says this person can do X, Y, or Z, whatever the certification is for, essentially. Um, that's one thing, is just communicating to other people what your expertise is. Um, I also think that it can be helpful because the process of getting the certification, if it's different from what you're normally doing, um, might be educational. Like because you might have to go through a specific training or take some specific classes that will teach you something that you didn't learn previously. And so the certification says that like at least those things, and it's also the act of getting it is a way to learn them. Um,
Yeah.
For me, it also means like verification. Like you can, um, if it's a good certification, you can look it up who certified the person, and there's some transparency into the process. So then you don't have to trust the person that they know their stuff. Like you can look it up. Okay, it was verified by this institution. This is curriculum or whatever the body of knowledge that was used to certify the person, and then you can verify for yourself if you trust that piece of paper or not.
Oh, I thought of another certification I have, which is a bachelor's of arts in philosophy. And one of the reasons why that's an interesting certification is something that Marcin just said, is I've heard of people lying about having degrees before. And specifically, my brother had a coworker who was running around saying she had a PhD when she did not. um,
What?
yeah. And so when he found out about that, he like let them know about it in his exit interview, like, hey, I went to that school. She does not have this PhD. I know the people there, and they don't know her. So
Wow.
it was pretty crazy. Um, but yeah, being able to have that verification of like you can confirm that this person does in fact know what they say they know or have the cert they claim they have is useful.
Yeah, but I haven't thought about it. Yeah, the university stuff is certification. Like I have engineer's degree in computer science, so it's I hope it means something to someone. I spend time on that.
I'm not going to comment on what my degree means. This is purely sentimental. Something about Russian city planning and astronomy don't. I mean, it's
Aw.
fine. We're good.
It's okay. Nobody takes philosophy because of the practical applications of it.
It's yeah. Okay. So you kind of just brought something up, but like how does it legitimize us to have it's not a degree but like a certification path? Does it legitimize QA? Does it legitimize game QA? How do y'all feel about the legitimacy of seeing this pop up?
I think it's not about like le- le- legitimizing the industry in itself, because I think that's just the need of the industry. Like if the industry wouldn't need us, then we wouldn't just not exist. So I don't think there's that. I think it's more to helping us having common language together, and being able to recognize fellow specialists in the field, and having like representatives, because in the end we as a testing industry, like the same as with doctors, like there's some um I'm gonna it's Sunday, words are missing, but there's like trust, and there's like you trust doctors, like you think that the doctor is someone, like it's an important person, like it has that reputation, right? And I think that certification helps with that, having the reputation as an industry. If we don't have certification, it's kind of hard to be the reputation, because imagine somebody saying they are a tester, and then they just imagine they're the rogue person that basically is the worst tester ever, and basically casts a bad light on the industry. And then we cannot just say, he's not a tester, because there's no like trusted institution that basically is acknowledged by the whole industry, saying, okay, if you're a representative of our industry, this is the certification you have to have, otherwise you're not speaking on behalf of our industry. But I think we don't have it right now. So
Sure. So that's an interesting perspective. And I know Ariel, you and I in the pre-show have had this conversation, but can a bad certification harm the profession? Like the opposite and kind of the tandem thing that Marcin's saying here. Could having a bad certification, could not having a rigorous training program for a doctor or whatever, and giving them an MD, degree, how could being having a bad certification harm us?
Well, I think one of the ways that certifications in general can cause harm is that they can constrain the way people think, or teach them to use like processes and strategies that are less than ideal, for example.
Mhm.
And what a bad certification can do is do exclusively that with like no benefit, essentially. So you're only teaching someone the wrong process, the wrong strategy, the wrong tools, the wrong words, even the wrong definitions. Like if the things that you're actually like teaching just don't correspond to the reality of what what the work that certification is supposed to prepare you for then you'll be steering the wrong, like totally steering the wrong way. Like what if you took a driver's class, like a student driver's class, where they taught you that in America you're supposed to drive on the left side of the road? Um, or what if you just took a generic driver's class that said that, but it didn't specify the location of where you were. It just said always drive on the left side of the road.
Sure.
And then in some places you would be driving correctly on the left side of the road. Other places you would be incorrectly driving on the left side of the road, because it didn't teach you the important context. Make sure you're driving on the correct side of the road for the country that you're in, which may be the left side or the right side. So I think a bad certification will teach you like things as if they were true, even if they're not. Like,
Yeah.
drive on the left side of the road, for example. Um, so yeah, when I the first question I have about a lot of these like certification processes is, what exactly are they teaching, and is that
Yeah.
valuable? Um, and sometimes I think the answer is no.
Is there a timeliness to certifications as well? Because if we think about it, driving has changed a lot. Even in the span of our generation, driving is changing considerably. We have the advent of self driving cars, we have changes to things like red light cameras and speeding cameras, observation that's going on. We have mechanical toll roads for controlling some of those things. Do you all think that there is a timeliness associated with certification, and what do you think the review process for that should be like?
I think there are two approaches. One is that it's always has an expiration date, and then they just tell you to recertify. They put like a date, like every few years you have to recertify. And I think that's the best option because the other one, I think the Cambridge English certification says it's timeless as long as you're working in a field where appropriate level of English is used to allow you to continue that. That's science kind of like cheating. Like, how can you assess if like you're now putting out of trust in the person who verifies that? Like, it's not verifiable. Like, I passed my certification Cambridge Advanced English in when I was 18. God knows if I would pass it again. But it says on it's timeless. So I always worked in jobs where I had to use English. So I guess I am still certified. So I think the time the
No big
time
deal that you're doing a podcast in English right now.
Yeah.
yeah.
Just turn this in as your
Yeah.
as your homework.
Here's my video proof. Hello.
Yeah. Um. So I actually got certified as a Aikido brown belt many years ago, and I have kind of studied Aikido off and on since then, but I haven't like gotten recertified or gotten a higher level belt since I got that second Q. Um, and so I think that if someone saw my like level of uh or if they saw that level and how long it had been since I got it, they might like justifiably look at it and be like, she's probably pretty rusty. She's probably not exactly performing as a second Q. But if I got that like 20 years ago and then I got a black belt today, they wouldn't care that the old certification is like out of date because the new one overrode it. So I
Yeah.
think as long as there's like some kind of demonstration of progress, like either through getting higher level certifications, then maybe you don't need to take the first one over and over
Yeah.
again. But yeah, like I think these things can totally like expire over time. Like you will forget things. That's part of why the driver's license, for example, expires automatically
Sure.
every few years, and you have to get a new one. Also, like you know, driving laws change it, and that's one of the things that you're supposed to be tested on when you get certified with a driver's license. Is how well do you know the law of the road? Um, the law of the road. Um,
Sounds very serious.
I think the other point that is like again, I will go back to the doctor stuff, even though it's probably more important than QA. But I think it's probably for a lot of fields when there are like councils that can even revoke your license
Yeah.
if you did something really bad. And I think that also is good when you have such a body when that is trusted and can if you do something really bad, they do like, hey guy, like this is like you have to either redo your license or take a break for 3 years,
I'm trying to
just to make sure that
imagine. Or go ahead and finish your thought.
Uh, yeah, the thought was that I just lost my phone. Sorry.
I'm sorry.
No worries,
I
it's fine.
I was just trying to imagine what someone could do to get their tester certification revoked. Like oh, you missed a really really bad bug, or you marked a test case as passed when you didn't even run it. Like certification revoked or something.
I have definitely felt that way in my career before. So
Like you wanted to revoke someone's certification.
or I needed mine revoked too. I think we've all got that
Oh
that
yeah.
checked
Mhm.
in our histories.
Yeah.
Um okay, so let's move forward here to talk about the ISTQB. Uh Marcin, I saw you did some research here on different qualifications boards. Ariel, you too. I'm happy to chime in as well. But what is the ISTQB and why does it exist?
Someone else handle
I mean,
this.
okay. So it's the
You have
international
it,
soft.
Chelsea. You have to say it.
Yeah, I think Chelsea has to say it.
Yeah.
I I
Democracy.
I
I'm
think I'll struggle
interjecting
with
my
the why
book.
does it exist part.
Right. Okay, so the ISTQB is the International Software Testing Qualifications Board, right? And there we go. You've got the newer version of it. I've got the older version of it.
2018, baby.
Yeah. So what is it? It's a group that tries to make a certification so that we're all speaking the same language, that we learn the same practices. And quite honestly, when I look at it, it's breaking down problems and learning how to deal with them in a standardized way. Now, here's so that's kind of why it exists, right? But it it exists in such a large space. It's the Software Testing Qualifications Board. And if we think about games, games are software, right? But some of
Entertainment
the
software.
premises that apply don't necessarily apply to games. So, how do y'all feel like how well does it apply to games?
So I'm going to preface this by saying that I have read through the syllabus for both the game testing one and the core testing one, but I have no certifications. I've never taken any classes or anything along those lines. So my experience with the ISTQB is limited, but I will say that, like, from what I have seen, a lot of the things that are in the original core certification are like could be
That's
relevant to
foundation level, by the way, just to
foundation level. They could be relevant to game testing, but a lot of it isn't because we just don't do the kinds of testing that the foundation level talks about consistently. We do a lot of it, and so a lot of like more of it is relevant than not. But it seems to be primarily geared towards like enterprise level software, and that is a different like thing to target with your testing, and so the way in which you approach it is going to be different than the way in which you would approach game testing. um I'm sorry, does that answer the question, Chelsea?
yeah, yeah, yeah. So I think so. Given that perspective, do you think there are other spaces in software which also may struggle with the same concept of like, hey, we're not the exact same?
Yeah, I mean, almost certainly. Because
I think it's a
not every software company is making enterprise software.
Yep.
I think it's a hard task to try to put all the flavors of testing into any course, really, because even in gaming, like even if you made a fundamentals for gaming, like MMO testing versus mobile game testing versus like a single player like any like there are huge fundamental differences that like you could some skills are uniquely transversal, but there will be a lot of niche topics that you wouldn't be able to properly, like I wouldn't even dare to test an MMO, even though I played them for a long time. Like it's so like I couldn't imagine. So I guess the
Yeah.
same as for the enterprise of like it's they try their best, and I think it's a good effort. But all the flavors of software testing, because it can be the same thing, like testing a bank institution that probably still uses like C as a primary language, and they have to hire like legacy code translators in order to verify stuff. And then you have the other spectrum of startup mobile applications who are super new and cool with newest languages. Like I guess you cannot just easily marry those two worlds and be like, okay, if you have AIs to keep the foundations, you can go and test a bank application, or you can go and test mobile and be an expert in it. Like I think that's not
it,
easy to do.
it's kind of like having a single driver's license and a driver's license course that assumes you're going to drive a car, and instructors that are going to teach you how to drive a car, but then you are actually going to drive a motorcycle, or you're actually
Or
going
a
to
truck.
drive a semi truck, right? And
Yeah.
the rules for those vehicles are different, and the way in which you would drive those vehicles are different. The general, like, lessons that you can learn about what the laws are for driving are probably mostly applicable to those cars still, right? They still drive on the same side of the road as cars, but the rules are a little bit different. And so if you have someone who has only ever driven a car doing the certification for driver's licenses, then they're probably going to miss how what they're teaching is going to veer off of what the motorcyclists and the truck drivers need to learn,
Yeah.
because they're just not aware of their own bias unless they talk to, say, some motorcyclists and some truck drivers to get their perspective and to find out what kinds of things they would expect to see in a certification like that.
It's an interesting point because for my sailing certification, it specifically states what kind of boats I can use, and this is my limit. Like somebody can look at it and be like, "Hey, sorry, this is a too big of a boat for you to sail."
Sure.
and I don't think that's for IST. Like, I guess you can just say it's too big of a software for you to use for test.
So let
Be-
me ask you. Oh, go ahead,
no,
Ariel.
no, no. Go ahead. Go ahead.
So let me ask you a kind of salty question. I want you to put on your skeptic hats here, and say like, is this actually useful? Are there cases where it may not be useful to have ISTQB? Like, I want you to give me your saltiest perspective here. And
Chelsea,
this
I
isn't
sleep
no.
with my skeptic hat on.
I'm into it. I'm into it. I'm into it. So give me your skeptic approach to it. I want to hear.
um, yeah. So generally speaking, when I am looking at candidates, for example, that have ISTQB certification, the thing that I struggle with is I I don't I have yet to see a ton of like really good use cases for the certification in my like day-to-day interactions at work.
Mm-hmm.
In the sense that like for the most part it just doesn't really enter into play when people have certifications. Like it doesn't really seem to change their contributions or give them an expertise that their experience didn't. Like it just seems like it's just like an extra thing that they kind of added on top of their already amazing expertise from having years of experience doing this, but it doesn't really seem to like change anything in any significant major way. And in fact, sometimes I've noticed that like people who have ISTQB certifications will come into game testing like utilizing terminology that we don't use, or using terminology that we do use but in a different way than we use it, and it just seems like they're kind of disconnected from what game testing is actually like. So I worry that it's teaching them things that are applicable to other industries but are not applicable to what we're going to be doing, and they walk through the door thinking, oh, I have all of this really awesome like useful knowledge, and then we have to be like, okay, we actually have to like retrain you on a bunch of this stuff because this doesn't apply to game testing in the same way. So I like when I see an ISTQB certification on a resume, for example, it doesn't really make me more excited, or it doesn't make me say, oh, I can be confident that this person has this level of expertise. The only thing I learned from that is that they care enough about their profession to pay for a certification outside of like what they're required to do, right? Like if someone with no experience has a foundation level certification, I'm like, oh, cool, they went and got a certification because they wanted to learn about testing. But that's the extent of which I gain any level of confidence in them as a candidate. It's just that they showed some initiative.
For me, it's the same as there's the discourse when talking about academics and universities when you have artists ending art school, and a lot of people have gripe that you go for art school and it doesn't prepare you for the reality of work in the industry. But I think there's a difference between making you an artist and artisan. Like
Oh, I like that
like
idea.
I think like ISTQB gives, like, it's very academic. Like it gives you a nice mindset of a tester, but doesn't necessarily make you a good hands-on tester that you basically can jump on any application or game and be like, I can test it. Like it
Yeah.
gives you a nice mindset, so I know that at least the person has some knowledge of principles and will have proper mindset when approaching testing, but doesn't tell me anything about their testing skills.
Yeah. I mean, I think for me to give my perspective here, I have a lot of certifications. I have foundation level mobile advanced test manager and analyst. I've taken the technical test analyst course, and I'm really hopeful that I'll get to take a few more courses over the next couple of years. Um, I hated taking those tests, but they made me really sit down and scrub through what was useful. And so the skeptic in me says like so much of what we do is different. And like someone said in the chat, F0 TV said, I've yet to hire someone with a PMP cert that doesn't get very annoyed at how games are made. Oh my goodness, so true. And then insert ISTQB into that if they're coming over from the software industry. And that's reality too. Like the skeptic in me says, you know, the principles are really good there. Maybe the practices aren't. So I was very glad when they released that they were making a gaming syllabus.
I mean, major banks in Poland still use Excel as test management software, so I wouldn't be so sure about software industry being so much better than game. I think it
I
depends on
mean,
the company.
it's the truth. I mean, it's the truth though, because I think we see more and more software breakdowns at large scale and more single points of failure in software. I've experienced a couple, and then wasn't there one the didn't they say that the flight cancellations that happened all across the U.S. in January or December were essentially caused by one script that took the servers down? Like, don't at me. I'm not sure on this, but like these things happen in the real world.
Yeah. I also, when you were talking about testing skills back there, like that sparked something in me, in that, like, I don't actually correlate the things that the ISTQB teaches to what I would call testing skills, because I think that there are a lot of like really important
Mm-hmm.
skills that are related to testing, like being able to think critically, for example, and that's not something that the ISTQB teaches, right? Like, I also think that being really curious, for example, is something that makes the tester a really good tester, and that's not something that ISTQB teaches. So there are a lot of like
Yeah.
skills and values and perspectives that are very useful for testing, and the ISTQB and other certifications like it don't really have a like that in their syllabus, or aren't able to teach it effectively. So I don't think to myself like, oh, this person is certified, therefore they have all the skills they need. I don't actually
Mm-hmm.
know if they have the skills that they need, because the ISTQB isn't testing them for their critical thinking skills.
Absolutely. Yeah, yeah. I agree with that. I think it's being someone who really loves spending time in the kitchen. It's the difference in doing a recipe to the letter of the recipe, and I think adding your soul into what you're cooking. And, you know, everyone knows that the way that your insert family member, insert friend made macaroni and cheese, insert whatever food you want, but I'll pick macaroni and cheese because that's what I want. Um everyone knows that they made it with something extra. And it wasn't, even if you get the recipe, it's not the same. And I think quality very much has that same soul. There's so much instinct to it. You can tell someone, hey, this is how we're going to look for it, or we're going to write a test plan to approach how we're going to take the strategy of it. But it really takes the knowledge and the experience of time to understand that, like, hey, if we're making changes to nav mesh, we should expect X, Y, and Z, and to have the instinct to go and take a look at that.
But even with your example with the following the kitchen recipe, like if you ever never were into the kitchen and you would need to follow a recipe, like you would probably instantly fail because
Oh
the
yeah.
recipe doesn't tell you anything about using the tools, right?
I would sit here and ask y'all, what was the first thing that you cooked? Like, do you remember the moment being terrified first in the kitchen? But we'll save that for later. We'll put it in the Discord if you want some extra sound bites. Let's talk about cooking, right? Sarah, you make a great point. She just said that's why we write test cases, right? Yes, our job here is done. Um, so we can just log off. Bye for the day. No. But yeah, yes, that's it. You just got to the crux of it. Okay, so I want to keep us moving forward.
Yeah.
Are there other certifications that are out there that might be better? Are there things that we aren't looking at? Can y'all bring me some indie versions of the ISTQB? Is there something I can do? What if I don't trust this?
So I have a
uh,
spicy course because one of the BBST course, one of the lecturers is a lady that was responsible for helping writing the first ISTQB glossary, like the first one, and
Okay.
now she basically hates with her soul ISTQB.
Okay.
And that's why she's participating in BBST because it's very hands-on. Like the exam is not you answering academic questions A, B, C, and D. They give you a real-life example of a software that you have to test, and based on what was your process in testing that, they assess you based on that. So it's very like hands-on. They teach you like practical. What Ario mentioned, like all those necessary skills for you to be able to be a good tester no matter what you're testing, which is like
yeah.
nice uh, difference of when you Chelsea said about different learning styles, right? Like ISTQB is very academic. Here's an exam, questions A, B, C, and D, and that's how you verify your knowledge. While BBST is basically, okay, here's a piece of software, show us how you test it, and based on how you test it, we're gonna decide if you're good at tester or not.
Yeah,
BBST is black box software testing, by the way.
Yes.
it feels like the difference between like a test and a quiz. A quiz is going to like ask you true or false, multiple choice questions, fill in the blank type stuff. Like it's not really challenging you in a significant way. It's just like checking, do you know the specific things we're checking to see if you know. But a more open-ended test like what you're describing, Marcin, that honestly sounds great to me. Like I'm curious about maybe getting like advocating for that kind of certification in my org, because the idea that they're doing a more holistic test where they're asking you to, okay, now put all the pieces together and show us what you've learned in a more like big picture view. Like that sounds great. And I feel like if someone was able to pass that test, then there would be a stronger indication that they would be an effective tester, as opposed to indicating that they know all of the testing terms as the ISTQB describes them.
Cool. All right, is there another one? Because I feel like we have one more.
I mean, the other ones are basically, if you can go the rabbit hole, but a lot of those sounds like very corporate certifications. So there's HP
I was gonna say,
certification. There are
yeah.
different types. I can't even list them all. Like the one that we have in the links is the ISO 9000 standard,
Oh God, please,
which we
let's not
currently are
talk about that anymore. Okay.
we for example right now currently with my friend and Connect, we are integrating risk management from that standard, because there are some parts, again, like the same with
Yeah.
STQB, there are not everything in the ISO 9000 is applicable everywhere, but there are parts of it where you can pick and choose and use it. But then again, we go back to discussion of what's the point of having certification when you pay a lot of money and then half of it you throw in the trash and just half of it is useful to you.
Yep. So there is a master's degree actually that centers around the use of ISO 9000. It's the only, well, I think there are a couple of quality programs in the United States, but like you can you can dig into this standard forever. Okay, so hold on one moment. I'm going to cough.
I mean, there's an ISO for sending internet with
Yeah,
pigeons, so
yeah. um, So, I mean, we've kind of consulted a bunch of controversy, and what I think will continue to happen if we're interested as a group is we're going to continue to discuss these to take the skeptics approach. And so, if you want to join us along for this series, recognize that what we're doing here is we're not saying this is the way to go. We're also saying this isn't the way, the way to go. Keep with us. And we'll keep talking about it, and we'll bring our favorite skeptic along with us. She's sitting right there, and get ready because this isn't a glorious praising of everything that the ISTQB has done. It's also not a flaming burn all of the system down. So be prepared. Okay, so let's keep on moving. It feels like there is a disconnection that we've talked about just briefly, that maybe the ISTQB and game testing aren't on the same page.
it I think we've talked about it, Chelsea, right? Like it feels like this is a nice
Yes,
book. It
I have that book
has
too.
Yeah, it has 400 pages, and it's a nice history lesson of how testing looked for the past 20 years. But it's just that, it's a nice history lesson, just to maybe take some concept, and it has some cool software that normally is not even available, like for randomizing different paths. So it's really cool. But otherwise, I wouldn't recommend it to for anyone to read it and be like, okay, now I know how to test stuff. And the same feels about the ISTQB game testing. Like when I was reading it, it felt basically like that. Like it takes very loosely concepts that are like we have a Poland, in Poland we have the saying that they know where the when the church bell is. They know that the bell church is ringing, but they don't know in which church,
Sure.
because it's, it's I wouldn't use that as a it's a nice curse for that. I wouldn't pay so much money to get that knowledge, but if it was for free, it's like, okay, if you have zero knowledge about game testing and you have to start somewhere, sure. But I think also there are better books about it than it is. So it's quite disappointing that like I was when I first heard about it, I was super happy. Hey, game testing has been acknowledged by ISTQB. That sounds really cool. But then you read it and it's like, oh guys, come on, like I would, it's again not too flaming about it. Like it still have a lot of cool concepts, but again, it's like 50% of it is cool and 50% is like it's not how it is. And again, the question is, are we using ISTQB to be valuable in the industry, or are we just learning the concept that you're gonna be you'll have a mindset of a game tester, but though you won't have any game testing skills at all.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think the thing that really kind of crystallized for me that this document does not actually represent game testing as I know it was there's a table in it that we've talked about in chapter 1, which is basically just breaks down the roles of different people within a game development studio. And it uses terms that we don't use, and there are entire roles that are completely absent from it. Like it doesn't have any artists as listed on the table. It uses the term developer when it probably means programmer or engineer, because it's talking specifically about programming. And and there's a lot of people who help develop games that aren't just programmers, like designers and testers and artists and all these other folks. And then there's also like roles that it lists that I've never even seen. Like they have a role called the analyst, which is the person who like maintains the documentation essentially, which sounds great. I would love to have one of those in my org, but as far as I've seen, like that role doesn't actually exist. So I feel like this document could be describing game testing somewhere, but it's not describing game testing as I have experienced it. And that seems to be like a pretty significant disconnect for a lot of people, is like they're just like, I don't see the game testing that you're talking about. This must be somewhere happening somewhere else.
Marcin, thoughts?
I think I think I already shared those. Like
Okay.
this is again like I would like to love to get people that created that syllabus and see the process behind it, because it seems like, again, like it seems like good intentions, but the result is different from the intentions. Instead of getting like comprehensive guide, like foundations guide how game testing looks like, it takes vocabulary from our industry and doesn't know how to apply it realistically. So
Yeah.
it's a hit and miss, basically. Like somebody that didn't know anything about, like, and probably that's it. Like, again, like if I had to test MMOs, I don't know how to test MMOs, so it would like be me assessing, okay, or with, I don't know how to test looter shooters, right? So I would be like, Ariel, teach me how, like, make me a course about testing looter shooters like Destiny, and then I would be like, how can I assess the validity of that? And it seems like
Yeah.
it was done like this. Like the person that was got this a lot of information from the experts that were combining that knowledge, like look at it and was like, seems good. And that's that. Like they have no way to validate if the knowledge there holds ground. And then like it seems like there's something missing in the process. Like again, intentions were good, but there's missing in the process, like maybe asking more than one team or one company or one other person, I don't know how it looked, how it was created,
Yeah.
and asking multiple people and being like, do you also agree with this, or should we change something? Like I think that what I'm looking for is peer review, right? Like we're missing peer review from other industry specialists to verify that syllabus is okay.
You hear us, ISTQB? We want to help you review things.
Oh, I would,
Get
yeah.
us. Help. Let us take a look.
Help us
Uh,
help you. Help us
let,
help you.
help you help us help you help us.
Yeah.
So we posed this question to the community on a couple of different social media platforms, including our Discord, which you should join. Details on how to join will be posted in the chat, but search for us. We are searchable, Underground Game QA, in Discord. Come join us. But here's some thoughts from the community. At Raptica tweeted, learning common best practices, terminology, etc. is great. I think the focus should be on the learning, sharing of knowledge in an accessible way, more so than on the certifications themselves, though. Guru Rao 97 said, not for now, the workflow of QA is a bit ambiguous and it depends largely on how the studio wants to utilize its QA team. I don't mind the certification part, but it shouldn't be criteria to hire someone in a QA department. Distort Art on Twitter said, I think standardizing QA training could be really helpful. However, creating more borders to job entry sucks. And that was a pretty common thread we saw on social media, which is don't create arbitrary barriers to entry. So Bish Tweets said, I like this. I definitely wouldn't want it to be a barrier to entry. And I think knowledge of the syllabus is useful enough, and the qualification would just be part of someone's development plan if they wished. And then lastly, CJ Straw 93 said, it's difficult to give a definitive answer that everyone will agree with. This is partly because QA is often seen as an entry into the industry because it doesn't require experience or a degree in a relevant course. That being said, I think it'd be useful for those who want to take their skills to the next level, so long as they have the courses available. So I wouldn't make it mandatory, but I would make these courses far more well known. I've been in QA for 7 years now and I've never heard of them. And then they put a laughing crying emoji. This kind of stuff should be at GDC to help other departments and companies understand the importance of not just QA as a whole, but well-trained, integrated, and valued analysts and leads, etc. Yes. If you could see me, I'm snapping right now. I'm clapping. Yes, yes. So we really appreciate your responses on social media. Keep giving them, keep hopping in the Discord with those. So kind of to wrap up this thought here, is there anything y'all would like to say? You know, we've talked a lot about disconnects. We've talked a lot about this coming into the industry. We've talked about what's coming. What do y'all want to leave people with as we approach this series of looking at what these certifications mean, as we look at the impact across the industry, legitimizing, what's one thing you could say to entice people to keep interacting, to come back for more, and look at this as something that they should or shouldn't do for their futures?
I would like people to be constructive about it. Like whenever there are discussions about the STQB, no matter what industry or software or game, there's always this division of 50% saying STQB, we hate it, we don't want it, and 50 being like, hey, it's cool, it's good to have it. And it's easy always to say somebody did a lot of work and then be like, haha, look at how bad it is. Like it would be more constructive because it's not easy to make a game testing syllabus again. Like it's so many flavors and so many topics to cover. So it would be more mature and better for the industry for us to look at it constructively and be like, hey, this is our input on this. This is our feedback. This is how can you make it better so the industry is better for it instead of just being, a dunkathon on stuff. Because otherwise we just won't move forward as an industry. We'll go forever. We'll be just, a bunch of tribes doing stuff instead of being like a nice working together industry.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I think that there was a really interesting common thread through a lot of those tweets that you shared, which was that people seem to have the sense that there's these like sort of two different levels of being new to testing. The first is you're brand new to it, never tested anything before, and this is your very first testing job. And then there is like people who have done that but have not yet like translate it into, okay, and now it is my career. Now I am a career tester. And I think that the ISTQB is aiming to help people make that transition from entry-level game tester to career game tester. And it even says in the ISTQB cert that you should have at least a year of experience in game testing, and you should have the foundation level covered already. So this is like expecting that you've already done you've already done the legwork to make sure that you're interested and know that you want to keep pursuing it. But what's some of those folks are pointing out is that it's not very accessible to folks who are at that entry level, right? People who are working jobs that, don't pay very well, don't have a ton of benefits, and they don't have a lot of extra cash to spend on classes and certifications and things like that. Like, it is going to be very hard for those people to like bridge the gap if the certification is the thing that's going to help them get there, because they might not have the money to pay for it. And it's also not going to help people get the entry level position if there is like a bunch of assumed knowledge that they don't have, such that they're actually going to like struggle to get through the material because they've never done any game testing before. And so I I would really like to see a version of this that is for those people, that is for the people who have no game testing experience and they want to learn more about game testing. I want to be able to say, here's a resource for you that you can use to learn more about testing and to start like getting your feet wet. And I wish this was that resource, but like I don't think it is. And I don't think it's trying to be either. I think it really is trying to be the bridge between I'm an entry level tester and I'm a professional tester. And I think that because of who game testers are and the financial situation of most of them, I think that a lot of them are going to be disinterested in this because of how much it costs. So the main driving factor will be whether or not orgs are willing to pay for their entry level game testers to go get this certification. And if that's the case, then the ISTQB really needs to make sure that this certification actually supports the kinds of testing those orgs do by reaching out to them and asking them what they think and what is missing and what needs to be added. So hopefully we'll be able to do some of that here, like by going through it in this series, and we can maybe point out to the ISTQB like, hey, we are game testers and we've taken a look at this document and we feel like it does not match up with our expectations according to these in these various ways, and maybe that will spur the ISTQB to make some improvements that will make it better and more useful. I mean, that's me being hopeful for the future, because I do think that like there is something here that could be valuable, right? Teaching people a common language, a common lexicon of like, this is how we talk about testing. And so now we can talk about testing together and use that common language. That would be great. I don't think we have it yet, though.
Well said. Stay tuned with us. Like, come on this journey with us. Participate. Keep talking about it, and we'll do our best here to represent as much of the industry as possible, knowing that we can't always do that. So your participation in this is key. We made this community to have everybody here having this conversation together. So stay tuned with us. And as we wrap up today, I want to take a look at a pretty funny bug. Hold on, let me see if I can share my screen well. Lord knows with all my technical ability
so adventurous,
here.
Chelsea. Damn.
Share. We got it. So we were told about this bug, which can someone describe what's going on the screen here?
Yeah. So basically, what happened is this is a like software for paying bills at a restaurant, essentially. And so there is a option to enter a tip amount, and there's a couple of like default options for like 15%, 20%, 18%, whatever. And there's also a custom option. And so what someone did is they entered a negative number in the custom option so that their bill actually totaled out to 0.
Love it.
Which is
and
great.
The caption on it says, "Always tip your software tester."
Yeah, for real though. Yeah. So what's funny to me is that like the entering a variety of kinds of numbers into any like space where software allows you to enter numbers is one of like the most common tests a tester will do. Is they'll enter a high number, a low number, zero, a negative number, and then like a bunch of letters. Like there's even a joke about like a tester walks into a bar and orders one bar, oh, one beer, 50 beers, -2 beers, A beers, and then goes, and then a customer enters the bar, goes to the bathroom, and the whole place catches fire. Um, but like this, it's like the definitive like basic test case in many respects is the I enter a wide variety of values into a field that allows me to enter values, and that apparently was not done here, which is funny.
It is called boundary value testing if you take your ISTQB certification. It is, in fact, a concept there. So I love this idea of us exploring some of the concepts we're going to talk about in the next few weeks. Also, yeah, please enter negatives in numerical fields. That includes an engine. You should try and do this in engine as well. Okay, that's it for us today, folks. I really want to thank Marcin and Ariel for joining us on the podcast today. And we'd also like to thank our audience for listening. We are here looking at your comments in Twitch. We are also broadcasting to YouTube now. And with your support, we'll be broadcasting on more platforms. We would not be doing this podcast without you. We wouldn't have the amazing Discord community that we have without you. And if you have any suggestions for future topics or bugs of the day that you want to share, we'd love to hear them. If you're a QA professional or anyone in the industry or outside of the industry and you want to be on the podcast with us, we would love to have you on. In any case, contact us at Underground Game QA Conf. That's CONF as in Fred at gmail.com. We used to be a conference. We're now a podcast. So that's why that email is like that. Or you can reach out on Twitter at Underground QA or hop into our Discord because we would love to hear from you and collaborate.
If
Before we
you
go,
All right,
oh,
I
go
just want to
ahead.
jump in real quick. If, for example, you say worked on this certification with the ISTQB and you would love to come on and give your
Yes,
context, we would love for that so much. So
please.
please come on. We would love to talk to you about it. We will be so nice. I promise we'll be so nice.
Yes.
Um, but really, it would be great to have someone who's worked on the ISTQB come on and talk to us more about how the ISTQB creates these syllabuses, because I think there's a lot of like, inside uh baseball going on here that we don't have visibility into in terms of like the philosophy of why the syllabus is written the way it is, and I'd love to have someone come on and tell us about that.
I'm going to at someone directly right now. Rex Black, if you're listening to this, if you're watching this somewhere, come on and talk to us about your thoughts. You have been instrumental in helping the ISTQB. Come on, get on the show. We want to talk to you. Before we go, does anyone have anything they want to plug today?
I want to plug the book club that we started. So we started a Underground QA book club that meets every second Saturday at 10 a.m. And right now we're actually going over the game testing certification from the ISTQB. So we've gone through the first 2 chapters already. Our next meeting is going to be on March 11th. Yeah, March 11th. And we're going to talk about the 3rd and 4th chapters of the syllabus. And then after that, we'll probably look for either some books or some videos or maybe some other kind of QA resource that we can go over and talk about. But I'm planning to keep that book club going for the rest of the year. And our next 3 sessions will be on the ISTQB certification.
And we'll be talking about those here too. So, added bonus, if you're participating, come and talk with us. You're already talking about it someplace. Marcin, anything you want to plug?
I think our merch, it's awesome. Like if you want this awesome poster or a very I'm prepared. Oh no, that's not. Ah, that's not the hoodie. That's the hoodie.
This,
That's the hoodie. It's also very comfy. I don't have it
that,
right now, but it's also and
this.
it's yeah, it's super awesome. Yeah. So if you want awesome QA merch, we have you covered. It's really awesome.
The merch is, it does not go to supporting the community 100%. After the cost of the merchandise goes to the Trevor Project and Girls Who Code. And so we don't take any funds from it. 100% of our sales go directly to charity, to making sure the folks who need help are getting the help that they need and that we're supporting the community. So buy our merch. There's a sale going on actually today. If you're in our Discord, you can check out the link. T-shirts are $15 even, and everything else is 10% off. So get in there, spend some money. We would love to have you represent us. There's stickers, there's skateboard decks. Awesome plug.
We have skateboard decks? I didn't realize
We
that.
do.
That's so
We
rad.
do.
You
We
do?
do. The last thing I want to plug is our LinkedIn. We are trying to get the community started on LinkedIn. Why? Because we can directly stream these streams to LinkedIn once we get to a certain place. It can also be a great professional community for you to show your participation and to bring others in who are in the game industry and in the QA industry. Hop into LinkedIn, search for Underground Game QA on LinkedIn, and join us there for the conversation. Anything else before we end here? We good? We're good? All right.
I think we're good.
All right. So thanks again for joining us today. Keep playing, keep testing, and the pandemic isn't over. So please keep washing yo hands. Thanks, y'all.
Bye-bye.